A barren library, access codes turning up late, if at all, promises broken across community, and Google's powerful hardware that runs Destiny 2 on medium settings. Stadia has arrived, and it's exactly what we expected. In some ways, it's even worse, and when it comes to the game quality, well, Google at worst outright lied, and at best misled people. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video. Today's one is a little bit special. We've got our hands on Stadia, we've put the controller and the service through its paces, so yeah, let's just have a talk about it. So first of all, let's go over how actually playing Stadia felt. Now, we tried out a few different configurations to just get a feel of various different realistic use cases. So to start off, we played on one of the Office Macs through Chrome using a wired PS4 controller. The Mac was connected over 5 gigahertz to our Nighthawk X10 router, which is a really good one, and was situated one floor up. And the connection in that computer is usually fine, 30 to 40 ms latency. It's what we play League on sometimes. Google's Project Stream Connection Checker reported 180 down, and that's apparently great by Stadia. Stadia consistently said good during gameplay. Our experience, well, it's somewhat different. So here, Samurai Showdown and Destiny 2 were literally unplayable. There was severe visual artifacting, massive input lag, massive lag spikes. I mean, like, seconds of lost gameplay. It was terrible. And even when it did work, I'd say it was unplayable. Destiny 2 looked terrible, and when we swapped to a mouse and keyboard for a more apt comparison of how most of us actually would play that game, I mean, it was a shock to the system. Aiming with raw mouse input, just the additional latency felt terrible, and it's kind of, I mean, it's just so bad it's hard to understand until you feel it. Our new editor, Nicky, thought we were exaggerating, and yeah, as soon as he actually touched the mouse, he kind of recoiled in horror. And just like the cursor reacting with a significant delay, that amounts to loads of overshooting. It made micro adjustments when aiming nigh impossible. Suffice to say, right, if a wireless connection at a distance through any wall is the only way you can play Stadia, don't. It's terrible. Now, this does a lot of damage to Stadia's potential use cases, especially as a traveling solution, so yeah, very unfortunate. Now, the next way we played it was the Google intended way. That was with the Stadia controller and the bundled Chromecast Ultra on a 4K television. Now, the controller itself is actually not bad. I think, I mean, I don't really like the design that much, but like, it does feel similar in quality, build quality to a PS4 controller. It's comfortable enough, though the triggers and shoulder buttons are a little bit flimsy, but overall, I'd say it's actually a surprisingly good effort for a controller from Google, way better than I thought it would be. Now, Stadia on this setup fared significantly better, although most of this could be down to the Chromecast being a stone's throw from our overkill router. Like, that's a £300 Office router that's pretty incredible. It is far better than the one that you will probably be getting from your like ISP bundled in. Now, we had a lot less visual artifacting, and it was a lot more stable. Overall, though, it was still subpar as hell. Playing around with Samurai Showdown's training mode, we saw that the latency was what I would call unacceptable, what Matt would definitely find to be, who's our producer and a big fighting game fan, just unacceptable for a fighting game. Now, in more casual play, I'd say it was acceptable after adjustment to the lag, but the lag certainly was there. Now, Destiny 2, it ran at a rock solid 60 FPS, but it still felt like I was slightly drunk, with the input lag just leading to overshooting. It didn't even look that good on the 4K setting, but as Digital Foundry reported, I mean, they actually found that Stadia was upscaling from 1080 and running Destiny at medium settings. Now, here on a television with a controller, we thought it was a good time to enlist a better point of comparison from a console player. So Ethan, who is an artist on our game team, plays Destiny 2 on a base Xbox One, and after playing for a while, he agreed that it felt worse than usual, but that the improved frame rates and that the loading time benefits really were a huge positive in Stadia's favor. Then the last way that we tried to play Stadia was on a Windows PC through Chrome. Our setup was a cable right directly into the router, okay, so we were direct on Ethernet, and the controller we used was the Xbox Elite Controller 2. Now, this configuration is what I would call the optimal gaming experience on Stadia. This is where the latency felt the lowest and the experience was the smoothest. I mean, Ethan was very close to saying that it was better than like a base Xbox One, and it certainly does have benefits over that. Now, there still was notable latency in Samurai Showdown, so I can't recommend it for anyone who's interested in latency-sensitive games. I mean, it's just not really good for that. Now that said, I will say that this is when it became apparent that Google have accomplished some of their goals with Stadia. Under the most optimal of conditions, it is a passable experience. It's not perfect, but slower games will feel just fine, like Assassin's Creed. And honestly, when considering this performance, like it could be replicated on, say, a Pixel phone or a budget laptop, that actually is where Stadia is an impressive piece of tech and a really good option. Although, as we're all aware, they're not the only ones on the market. There are other streaming solutions. Now, Digital Foundry, in their like-for-like 60 FPS comparisons, found that Stadia added an additional 50 or so ms of button-to-pixel lag over a native, like a local Xbox One. Now, that is a console that itself, personally, I think it has unplayable amounts of input lag. Now, in fairness, I've been used to 100 hertz like screens, PC gaming for years, and as compared to the baseline, I'd say I have pretty high standards for like input tolerance. Now, still with that, I would not play a shooter on this, not at all. And if you like games that are mechanically hard or in depth, I don't think you should consider Stadia. Now, basically it's a casual option at best. Samurai Showdown and Destiny 2, just no. Destiny PvE, you could get away with that, but man, Destiny PvP, Crucible, not on Stadia, not with that lag. Now, there is something else to mention here, the difference between input lag and then latency to a game server. So, game developers have been fighting latency for decades, and they've developed lag compensation techniques that basically blend game accuracy with a good, playing experience. Now, in the majority of cases, though, the user basically sees the client, their client that they're playing, update immediately, and then the server sort of amends that later based on what happens. Netcode evolved this way basically so that the user could have their input affect what they see instantly, and we've since learned to basically deal with the differences in what we see, when we actually play the game, and what the server sees. And that's basically, it's normally called shooter-first netcode. So streaming by its very nature, though, has a delay between the user and the client. Usually 30 to 40 ms latency feels good in a multiplayer game, but that doesn't impact every single action like with input lag. Now, the only way to make streaming feel better is to get the input to the server and the display rendered back faster. Now, there's little that can be done there on a game developer's end just to speed that up. It's all down to the infrastructure. Now, one other improvement could be in render times thanks to Google's hardware reducing the game's input lag. That's something that I expect we might actually see with Doom Eternal when it launches on Stadia. From what I understand there, the team is, technically incredible, but also have been working very closely with Google on the Stadia implementation of that game. Now, as for Stadia as a product, well, the setup process is just annoying and stupid. It requires two apps, like the Stadia app and then the Google Home app for the Chromecast. Come on, what the hell? That's just dumb. Now, you can't adjust any of your game settings or buy things from within Stadia on Chrome or the Chromecast. You've got to do that through the mobile app, which again is just annoying. In general, though, the controller and the Chromecast, it's a minimal enough setup. It works well enough, I guess. It's the experience we've already detailed, but in terms of other things, let's just talk about the library. As it stands, the game library is pretty tiny, and a lot of them are similar games. The action-adventure genre dominates, and nothing really stands out. They're priced competitively, sure, and so they'll cost similar enough to other platforms, but, some of the pro discounts, they do make it a bit more of an attractive offering, though I just can't imagine buying a game in Stadia. Getting Destiny 2 Collection or Samurai Showdown free with a pro subscription is an okay deal, but that's just two okay deals. That can't build a platform alone. Google really need to up their game here if they're going to capture the industry's market. And they're always going to have this problem where it's going to be a subpar experience to local, so why would you buy a game for that subpar experience at full price? I just don't think that makes too much sense. Now, Google say they've got games in the works and that they'll pick up, in a lot of the 2020 games, like with Doom Eternal, but, launching with a litany of issues, that's definitely one foot in the grave for them. Now, let's just talk about those issues for a second. So first off, it's just dumb stuff. Founder codes going out far later than anticipated because of back-end errors with Google. That's dumb. That's not how you treat customers. They have actually had to send out codes manually in the order of purchase, and that's left many founders frustrated and missing out on their name reservations. Now, this has also occurred with physical orders too, but the code is what actually provides access to the service. Now, naturally, some founders are posting their currently useless controllers on Reddit, and it's a funny enough scene and just a dumb situation. The Twitter is being consistently overwhelmed with disappointed customers, I think, as one may expect. And that's something we'll get back to in a second. Okay, next let's just talk about the service itself. So as Digital Foundry reported, games running on Stadia don't really look as good as what Google promised, right? The 4K stream has turned out to mostly be an upscale 1080p or 1440p, well, with Destiny 2 and Red Dead 2 anyway. Essentially, that stuff is Google lying about their service is doing doing baseline in order to secure pre-orders, and that's blatantly anti-consumer. They were already clear about some of the features they lacked at launch, but they had not spoken about this whatsoever, and that's just behavior that does not instill confidence in Stadia's future. Now, that said, Tomb Raider can do native 4K, and it does look quite pretty, but basically, Google have sold people in this 4K HDR experience, and like a few of their titles do that, but not all of them do. I mean, look, if you could play Red Dead Redemption 2 at 4K max 60 FPS with a little bit of encoding artifacts, then maybe that would be compelling. But right now you can't, and a lot of Stadia's selling point there is kind of gone. Now, while I think that Stadia is not going to join the Google graveyard anytime soon, given the investment they've put into games and, the stuff Jade Raymond is running there, it's a possibility, and I mean, they certainly have alienated early adopters. I would not consider this to be a great experience. And remember, 4K 60 is what they charge a pro subscription for. You don't get 4K clarity because it's streamed, you get more latency. I mean, look, tech-wise, I think this stuff's really impressive. As a tech geek, I think it's really cool, but it's not a great product. And to make matters worse, the Stadia account on Twitter, it actually said in Italian that games obtained free or with discounts thanks to Stadia Pro subscription will no longer be available once the subscription had expired. Shortly after that, when questioned in German on a separate thread, the account replied in German, and they said if you've paid for the game, you own it without a Pro subscription, which was later confirmed by both the Google France and Stadia account. So basically, it was initially unclear if they meant like own or play, but the Stadia account's English post says that free games will not be accessible and any purchase games will, which I mean, it's funny, and for the same amount of money, you could just not get like the Humble subscription, which would probably get you a lot more stuff, and a lot of that's indies that you could run on a low-end laptop, thus getting you a lot of entertainment for the same money, unlike with Stadia. So I mean, yeah, like it's off to a really rocky launch here. However, I will say there is promise to a portion of the industry here. First off, this is not going to replace any core gaming setup. I cannot imagine anyone considering this a better experience than playing on a decent PC or next year's consoles. Setup permitting, though, it is a viable way to play many games, yes. Given the general feedback seen from founders, there does seem to be a significant amount of praise for how smooth the experience is when moving around devices or even just playing. And I'll say that, yes, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, just fine in Stadia. As it stands, though, it seems to be a hit among people who are excited for it, but reviews across the board have been very mixed. Now, a positive and something that I haven't seen discussed much is the scalability of streaming for, say, institutions, and this is where something like this could be quite cool. A Stadia controller and a Chromecast Ultra, that's cheaper than, gaming hardware for an introduction to games or for extremely casual use. For schools and hospitals with reliable internet connections or even LAN centers or little, gaming bars that have a small amount of capital, yes, something like Stadia could be a compelling purchase. If the controller is offered, say, alongside a Pro subscription, leaving out the Chromecast, then there could be a market in repurposing weak gaming PCs pretty much as a terminal for something like this. But that said, Stadia has strong competitors, so that's kind of tricky. So overall, is Stadia in any realm a service that's worth using? Honestly, I'd say that it's got its uses for specific markets. It is, though, worth considering like the other competitors' services. And based on what we know, I would say no, the other services seem better. Now, Stadia's streaming setup is widely regarded as the best yet, although Google have not shown us the power that they actually claimed they had, and we've got no idea on the timeline of promised features. Still, we're not sure how Stadia compares to the quality and the latency on Microsoft's xCloud. However, if xCloud is comparable in either of those ways, then it will be the clear winner based on a massive library and the multi-platform backing. PS Now is seeing a revitalized push, and even Amazon, they're getting in on it too. So Stadia, as it launched, I would say doesn't stand a chance compared to the established players in the industry, especially if those xCloud like early access betas that have 50 games, if they get out quick enough. I definitely say that xCloud, when it launches with the full Games Pass library, as a value proposition, like even if they're not doing 4K HDR, even if it's only 1080p, which let's be real, I mean, it's the whole thing here is a value play, so that 4K HDR is like, who cares? I would actually say here. But if you're paying the same price as a Stadia Pro subscription, but you're getting the whole Game Pass library, I mean, come on. Stadia is doomed if that is what they're going up against with what they're currently presenting people with. I think it's basically as simple as that. It all goes back to the old adage, content is king. Google have treated this like a tech MVP. They've not made it for gamers who actually enjoy playing games. It's clearly not that game first as a platform. I mean, it literally is a gaming platform, but compare that to xCloud and the library that they're going to be offering there. I mean, this was not made by people who in depth know the industry they're going into. At least that is how it feels. And if how it feels is not in line with how they think, then yeah, they have failed in communicating how they think through the quality of their product and their service. And that's ultimately where the Stadia Founders Edition is right now. Not worth purchasing, probably not worth considering, unless you're in a tiny use case. I mean, being real, if you have the average fiber connection but are using Wi-Fi and have to use this through a wall, you're screwed. If you have like 30 or 40 down, like realistically based on our testing, you're screwed. I don't know who this product is made for. Google have just failed to make their case. So that's it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. Let me know what you think about Stadia if you've tried it out down below. And with that, I will see you next time.